This is the summary for lesson 13, more solutions to linear equations. And in this summary, we're going to take this equation, 2x minus 4y equals 12, and determine where the y-intercept is and where the x-intercept is of the graph of this equation. So in the first case, the y-intercept, or the vertical intercept, if you make x 0, so x is not moving along the x-axis at all, it's 0. So where it crosses the y-axis is going to be 0, and in this case, -3. If you place this x with 0, then 2 times 0 is 0, and you're left with what looks to be -4y equals 12. And I want to comment on this first. What you should do when you see this subtraction is change it to addition. So it looks like this. You're starting with this equation, 2x minus 4y equals 12, and that's a positive 4y. Then use the inverse operation, which is addition, and the additive inverse of a positive 4y to change this to a negative 4y. So now when you make x 0, 2 times 0 is 0, and you're left with a negative 4y equals 12. Do not work with this equation, make this 0, and say, oh, that sign right there is a negative 4y. It's not. This is the operation of subtraction. The sign of this 4y is positive. So you have to go through a step, or you should go through a step, and make this the sign of this 4y negative by using the inverse operation and the additive inverse. If you get in the habit of doing this, you will never get confused. This, leaving it this way, is a source of confusion in operations that you're going to do in the future. All right, so when x is 0, y is a -3. So that is the vertical intercept. That's the point on the graph where the graph goes through the y-axis. Now, what about finding the x-intercept? So we're going to use the same form. This is the standard form once again, but now instead of replacing x with 0, we're going to place y with 0. So now it's not going up or down the y-axis, it's 0 on the y-axis, and x is going to tell you where, the value of x is going to tell you where it crosses the x-axis. So the horizontal intercept, which is the x-intercept, when y equals 0. And that's going to be 6, 0. So when y is 0, now this is okay because 4 times 0 is 0. So you subtract 0, that's nothing. So you're left with 2x. And 2x equals 12. And so half of 2x is equal to half of 12. So x is equal to 6. So there are a couple of steps here. When y is 0, 4 times 0 is 0. And then 1/2 of 2 is 1. And 1/2 of 12 is 6. So if you take 1/2 of this side, you also have to take 1/2 of this side. So this is the multiplicative inverse, or the reciprocal of 2. And so you use that same factor to figure out 1/2 of 12 is 6. So on the graph, the x-intercept is 6, 0. It's the point where it crosses, where the graph of this equation crosses the x-axis. So solutions to the equation by starting with one value and then solving for the other value. So that's what this is practicing doing. So you're given one value and you solve for the other value. In this case, we want to figure out what the y-intercept is and what the x-intercept is. So let's go through this in a little bit more detail. So let me remind you of some things that you should remember from this lesson, which are, you have coordinates, and then you have points, and then you have solutions, you have equations, and you have a line. So here's the equation, here's the point that is on this line. These coordinates are going to be solutions to this equation. This line is going to cross the y-axis. This is the y-intercept. It's going to cross the x-axis. This is the x-intercept. So you have two forms that we've been working with. One is the slope-intercept form, which is this y equals mx plus b, and the other is the standard form, which is this ax plus by equals c. And so you're going through some practice of switching between the two forms. In some cases, the slope-intercept form is useful. In other cases, the standard form is useful. The standard form is really useful for finding the x and y intercepts, and we'll see that in a moment. But the slope you can get from both forms. In the slope-intercept form, m is the slope. That's defined as the slope. In the standard form, the slope is the opposite of the ratio of a to b. So it's the opposite of a to b is the slope, and you can see that. You're going to end up with y by itself, so at some point in time you will have to have divided by b. So that's why this is b down here. And also you're going to, at some point in time, you're going to move this ax term, a times x, that term, to the right side. So this is going to become a negative a times x. So that's where this negative a comes from. All right, so looking at the x-intercept and the y-intercept, when x is 0, that's going to tell you what the y-intercept is. And this is a little bit too much detail. I just want you to think about it. I'm going to show this in a little bit more detail in a moment. But the y-intercept, you figure out when x is 0. So x is not moving to the left or the right. It's just the point is located on the y-axis. And y is 0. Y is not moving up or down. The point is located on the x-axis. So this is the x-intercept, and this is the y-intercept. And you're going to see in time that the y-intercept, you're going to end up looking at by time is equal to c. So this part right here is equal to c, and to get the value of y, it's just y is equal to c divided by b. So the y-intercept is going to be c divided by b, and the x-intercept is going to be c divided by a. That's a little bit hard, so let's look at it a little bit more. So you have ax plus by equals c. So if we make x equal to 0, this part's going to go away. You're going to be left with this by equals c over here. So when x is 0, this is gone. You're left with by equals c. And to figure out what y is equal to, you divide by this b, and you get y equals c over b. This is the y-intercept. So this is where the line crosses the y-axis. The x-intercept, if you make y equal to 0, so you're going to get the value for x when y is 0. So you make y 0, and this part goes away. So you're left with ax equals c, and x is equal to c divided by a. So this is the x-intercept. So this is where the line crosses the x-axis. It's not up or down on the y-axis. It's 0 along the y-axis, and you move along the x-axis and place a point. That's where that line crosses the x-axis. So this is the x-intercept, and this is the y-intercept. A little bit too